Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'm your host for this hour and, frankly, every hour. Thank you for taking time out of your valuable day to spend with us. We appreciate it. We're going to have a unique guest this morning. Representative Steve Hodges is running on the Democratic ticket for the 8th District in Missouri to replace JoAnn Emerson. And because we are somewhat limited on time with a one-hour program today, I'm going to skip my normal bullet points and go straight to a discussion with Steve. I am going to hold calls until we've had an opportunity to try to at least get some of the basics out, and then if we have time at the latter part of the show, we will open it up to callers. So without further ado, good morning, Steve.
Good morning.
How are you? And thank you for joining with us.
Well, I'm fine. It's nice of you to have me on. You know, I hope in your part of the world it's better than... Oh, hold on just a second. There's my other line.
We've got a little bit of ice here and not much snow, mostly ice.
Well, here the ice is gone. I tell you what, it was icing up yesterday afternoon all over the plants and trees and things, and I just went outside a while ago, and it's not terribly cold. I mean, it's nippy.
Sure.
But I understand other points of the state it's not very comfortable.
Well, now you're in Cape Girardeau, correct?
No. East Prairie, Missouri.
East Prairie.
Yeah, I'm about 45 miles south of Cape.
I gotcha. Okay. So you're down on the boot heel.
Oh, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So you are the current Democratic nominee for the 8th District in Missouri. You're running to fill the seat vacated by JoAnn Emerson. And there are obviously a lot of questions from our listeners. We cover about 16 or 18 counties in the central part of the state, and of course, therefore, we have a lot of interest, and we've got a lot of geographic ground that we cover here. So, in light of that, I thought it might be a good opportunity for you to have a chance to speak with our listenership, let them understand your platform, what you're running for, where you stand on certain issues, so that they can be informed voters and make an intelligent, articulated decision. Sound fair?
Very good. I'm happy to do that.
Great. And we had another guest once before who was running under the Libertarian ticket, and I did kind of a word association thing with him. Before I do that with you, and it's because the questions are the same, and I think it'll help folks to formulate an opinion, perhaps you can give us a little bit of a background on who you are, what you're currently doing, where you're running, and so forth and so on.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, you mentioned that I lived in Cape Girardeau. Actually, Cape Girardeau was my birthplace. My mother was from Cape, and my dad was from Sykeston. I've lived in southeast Missouri all my life except for a 3-year window after graduate school. I attended the University of Missouri, Columbia, and got my MBA, and I went to work for a Carnation Company in the marketing division. My wife and I lived in Memphis, Atlanta, and Raleigh, North Carolina, and left what I would call probably a successful career there to come back home and go in business with my dad, who had an IGA supermarket here in East Prairie. Never regretted it. Got to come back, and we raised our 3 sons, in a small-town environment. And so we sold the store. Dad and I sold the store in 2005. And, I, at that time, was 57 years old, and I substitute taught some. I got a producer's license and worked with State Farm Insurance for a period of time, and someone approached me and asked me to run for state representative, and I was flattered, but I didn't think I was capable of doing that. I thought, you had to have all these prefaces to qualify yourself. But anyway, the party assured me, they contacted me, and they said, with your education, your work experience, your position in the community, your ethics, you'll make a great state representative. So I made the trip to Jefferson City on January 16th, 2006, and I was up there for 12 hours, and I called my wife from the hotel room that night, and I said, this is what I want to do.
Sure.
And so it was just, it was very flattering, and I was very excited about it. I found out a little bit about it. So since that time, I have been elected 4 different times. My first race was very competitive. I was going against a man. We were running for an open seat. I was going against a man who had been working on this campaign for 2 years. In fact, when I was in the State Farm office in Charleston one day is when I met him the first time. And once I made my commitment to go, and he and I maintained a friendship throughout that campaign, which I'm very grateful for. But I won by 152 votes out of about 11,000. I was outspent 3-1 in dollars.
Mm-hmm.
That was I was very scary. They told me that I was going to have to raise at least $15,000 to $20,000 to run that state representative race. And I not being accustomed to politics, I thought, where am I going to get $15,000 out of Mississippi County? One of the counties in the state. But it did happen. In fact, Clint Zweifel, the President State Treasurer, encouraged me. He said, Steve, I was the same way, and he said, just have faith, it will come, and it did.
Mm-hmm.
And Clint and I have talked about that story. In fact, he and I had a conversation a week ago yesterday in his office and talking about this opportunity, and I said, do you remember that? He said, oh, yeah. Clint, by the way, is the same age as my eldest son, so, it's like a son talking to his father.
Sure.
Of advice. But anyway, it's been the most rewarding 7 years of my life. The public service, I have always been involved in the community and my church activities. I've been involved in, 12 years in the school board, president of JC's in the Chamber of Commerce and vice president of Kiwanis, and, just a number of different things. Most recently with Southeast Missouri State, which is my undergraduate alma mater. I've been on the Athletic Booster Board. Presently, I'm serving on the board of directors of the Alumni Association, involved in a number of other activities, but being able to go to Jefferson City and have people call me with problems and getting on those things and solving, be involved in the democratic process, the legislative process. I'm just having more fun than somebody ought to have.
All right. Well, so do you have a website that we can give out to our listeners?
I had one. Quite honestly, I disposed of it after I won the fourth time. I didn't anticipate needing it, but I'm going to have one in the near future. Probably it's going to be something like stevehodges.net,
okay,
or something to that effect. But in talking, I'm in the process of putting a staff together. And this is one of the things we talked about yesterday. I was having a conversation with the people in Washington, D.C. with the National Committee, and this is one thing that we will be doing, and certainly I would welcome anybody to have inquiries, whatever manner that they wanted.
Gotcha. Okay. We're going to have a break coming up at the quarter hour, and so we'll be interrupted by that. I've got a project which I did with one of the other candidates, and basically I threw out terms and asked for a word association game. And I think because of the limited time that we'll have, and we've only got another 45 minutes or 40 minutes to go, I'd like to try to cover as much ground as possible so that our listeners at least have a basic introduction to you and then understand a little bit about where you stand on specific different issues and that kind of thing. So if you don't mind, what we'll do when we return back from the break is we'll go over some of those. Basically, they are predominantly national issues, but then some of them will be state issues. And, having run in the House before, I'm sure that you're comfortable with the concept of, dealing with those. So, excuse me for a moment. We'll be back in just a second.
That would be fine.
Until the sequester hits, is America on the brink of fiscal disaster? We'll compare the rhetoric to the facts, and we'll take a close look at the blame game. Plus, you can be part of the debate. Pick up the phone, call in, make your voice heard on the next Alan Colmes Show.
Weekdays 9 to midnight. It's the Alan Colmes Show on the Ozarks Best News Talk 107.1 The Point.
Having difficulty with your computer? Do you think it has a mind of its own? Well, don't be alarmed. This happens to everyone at some point in time. Worry no more. Computer Dave and Kyle can help you out with PC Geeks, a weekly show right here on 107.1 The Point. Tune in Thursdays at 1 o'clock to ask computer-related questions and listen to the web topic of the week. That's PC Geeks here on 107.1 The Point.
All right, we're back. Our discussion this morning with Mr. Hodges is being sponsored by our friends over at Pizza Hut. Make sure that you visit them on Porter Wagoner Boulevard. They have a great lunch special, runs from 11 to 2. And you can, they also on Tuesday evenings have a family night, which means children under 12 eat free. And also our friends, or my friend Mary over at Chantilly's Artisan Bakery. She is at number 2 Evans Arcade right off the square in West Plains. And you can reach her via telephone at 255-2253. Okay, Steve, thanks for spending that quick break with us.
So our program's sponsored by Pizza Hut, just like the Super Bowl, huh?
Well, we're not quite as big. We're working on it, but we're not quite there yet.
Well, that's better. Thank you.
I can throw a mean football, though.
I'm sorry?
I can throw a mean football, though.
Yeah, we're very good.
Okay.
My time.
Let's try to play this word association game, if we might, because I think that's a simple way for folks to get a grasp on where you stand on multiple issues in a brief window in time. And you know, we can maybe go back and expound on specific areas if you think that would be helpful for you.
And Mike, and if I'm not playing the game properly, you just stop me and tell me, okay?
I sure will. Okay, let's talk about a couple of issues that are national in nature. The issue I would start with would be term limits on Congress, on our federal Congress.
You know, that's at the state level. I'm against term limits. I'm not so sure that shouldn't be implemented to a point. You know, when I see someone, I'm sorry. Am I supposed to expound on that or one word?
Well, you know, just a quick sentence perhaps would work.
Okay. At the state level, I'm against it. At the federal level, I think that I might favor term limits. I see people in their very advanced in age, and I just wonder how competent. You know, this is not an easy thing to do. We have to be very competent in a lot of areas, and I just wonder, with all due respect to our senior citizens, I just wonder sometimes when you see legislators get on up into their 90s and haven't been helped to their seat, you know, is that the proper thing to do? So
sure.
At the federal level, yes, and at the state level, no.
Okay. Second Amendment and the current gun ban movement that's out there right now on a federal level.
On the federal level, on any level, I am not in favor of restricting gun ownership rights.
Would you restrict them in the sense that you could have specific types of firearms banned, or magazine sizes and ammunition types and those types of things, or are you just basically against it and you believe the Second Amendment stands as an individual mandate that says shall not be infringed?
I would not vote for any restrictions.
Okay. The Keystone Pipeline.
I'm not sure I'm familiar with that.
Okay.
Is this the thing coming from the...
From Canada.
Yeah. I'm definitely in favor of that.
Okay. We have had a number of executive orders that have recently been issued by our president, and they cover a gamut of issues, most notably, of course, or most recently, I should say, the firearms and Second Amendment issues. However, he's also issued a host of executive orders on other areas. Give us your thoughts, and briefly if you can, on the issue of executive orders coming from the president and their constitutionality, or if they are extra-constitutional in their nature, as in creating legislative issues. Where you stand on that? You
know, where do we make the best decisions? In Washington, D.C. for our local folk, or in our hometowns, in our home counties, in our home states? I do not favor executive orders, especially on controversial issues, when I think we ought to be able to have some kind of sovereignty and govern ourselves. So I'm not necessarily in favor of that. Again, I don't think you can make a blanket statement for all those things.
Mm-hmm.
But I really, it's just like education issues here in Missouri. Do I think the best decisions come from Jefferson City, or do they come from our local school boards? I favor the latter. I think we ought to have local control as much as possible.
Okay. There was recently an executive order on cybersecurity. Now, that in and of itself that's really not something that can necessarily be locally addressed. We have a lot of information coming out about China, who is violating all international law and all moral and ethical standards by constantly tapping into our computer networks in this country, both militarily as well as industrially, to steal secrets, whether they are industrial secrets or whether they're military secrets. Your thoughts on what we need to do? And I know this is kind of hard to throw into a one sentence answer, but where do you stand on how do we resolve that problem with China?
Well, I think we need to stand fast with China. Now, this is one of those issues I said, I think you have to take issue by issue. The federal government has the capacity to investigate and dictate and restrict at a much greater capacity than we do at a state level. I have been keeping up very much. It's funny that you should bring that up because I just talked about cybersecurity in a interview that I had last week. I tell you, Mike, it's going to become more and more of an important issue.
Sure is.
We're in a fast-paced technology society.
And technology always appears to rapidly outpace legislative efforts to control it or at least to understand it and deal with it.
Exactly. And I made when I made my acceptance speech in Poplar Bluff last week after I received the nomination, I talked to them about, they talked about where would you put more money in defense or cybersecurity. And I said, well, we certainly need to be a well-equipped military force.
Mm-hmm.
I have a son who, my middle son, my wife and I, who graduated from West Point, served in Germany for 6 years, did a tour in Bosnia, Kosovo, and also Iraq. And he used to tell me, he said, Dad, we have capabilities that are unbelievable. But in the same respect, how if we were to engage in a military conflict of tremendous magnitude, where would that come from?
Right.
And cybersecurity, they could cripple us in so many ways. It didn't matter how strong a military force we were,
Without computers, command and control is lost.
I said, just as a for instance, and I'm very interested in this subject. I said, just as a for instance, if they interrupted our transportation system,
mm-hmm.
What would that mean if they interrupted our utility system?
Sure, the grid.
Our communication system, they could cripple, they being whoever it is that's doing it, they could cripple the United States just in a matter of minutes. So that's kind of my feelings on that.
Okay. Foreign aid. Now, we've got a lot of instances out here where foreign aid is currently being, issued to our, quite frankly, enemies on an international basis. And, we recently had these sales of tanks and F-16 fighters to Egypt, which, for all intents and purposes, has pretty much declared their position. They're allying with Iran and so forth. Where do you stand on foreign aid to nations which, quite frankly, are diametrically opposed to the concepts of Republican, or I should say, a Republican democracy?
Mike, you don't know me that well, but I've been an athlete all my life. I've been competitive in just about any sport that you could pick out. And I tell you what, I never wanted to give anyone that I was competing against or who didn't like me an advantage. I'm against that.
Okay.
I understand what it does as far as, the economy, the monetary benefits maybe to our arms production businesses, but to feed and give aid to someone who is going to oppose us, I'm just opposed to that. I just think that that's bad public policy.
Okay. A particular note, if you make it up there, I'd like you to look into the fact that why we have a $300 billion shortfall in trade deficit with China every year, and we give them aid.
Well, that's a no-brainer.
Well, you don't have to look far. I just want you to look into it. How's that?
Exactly, except for the fact that, they're loaning us money all the time. Maybe they
yeah, we're giving them aid with money they lend us. That's an interesting concept, huh?
That doesn't make a lot of sense.
Hey, let's talk about drones for a moment, and the issue of there's two sides to this question, and we're going to get cut off at the bottom of the half hour with a break. So if we have to run over it, that we can. There's two sides to this question. One is drone use overseas, where our president is making life and death decisions about Americans. Number one. Number two, drones in general to be used in that format. And then number three, my concern, and I think the concern of a lot of our listeners, is that drones are it's not a long it's not a long shot for drones to become domestically used. And if the president feels that he's got authority to terminate Americans overseas, what would prohibit that from happening here? And you can take those in any order that you'd like.
Okay, well, this is kind of interesting because I had this come up in one of my agriculture committees at the state level.
By the way, you're beginning to sound like a Dixiecrat to me.
I am.
You are, okay. I mean, you're beginning to sound like, the old-style Reagan Democrat, who, quite frankly, in many cases, is more conservative than some of the rhinos that are currently in Congress today.
Well, Mike, not to avoid our question about drones, but when I was asked to run the first time, I explained to some of the people that inquired of me. I said, if you expect me to be what is thought of as a modern-day traditional Democrat, in other words, pro-choice, anti-gun, things of that nature, I said, you're talking to the wrong person. I guess we need to cease the conversation because that's just not the way I am.
Mm-hmm.
I am what I'm surrounded by in my environment here in southeast Missouri. Again, as I mentioned, my mom and dad are both from here. My mother was a Highschober. She was German, Scrubby Dutch, and very basic. Said we were probably what you would call lower middle class. We never went without food to eat and clothes to wear, but we never had anything extra either.
Sure.
My dad worked and my mom was home every day. So my values and my thoughts are very basic, and I think you're going to find that they're very consistent with southeast Missouri and the people there. Now, that being said, the drones, I can understand the use, especially in arenas like Afghanistan, things of that nature. They're performing a maximum service with minimal loss of life. When my son Andrew was in Iraq for that year, it was our son. I keep saying that. I try to include my wife. She always reminds me that she had a great deal to do with their birth. and I certainly
She's
don't.
Probably right there, by the way, Steve. I'm just
don't want to
just saying.
I don't want to disrespect my wife. But anyway, for security purposes and observation and intelligence and things like that, I absolutely have no problem with that. The situation where we had, I think, in Afghanistan, where we've had a time or so maybe where the general population was injured, terribly regrettable. I mean, what time do you ever enjoy when somebody, an innocent person is killed, a local citizen? But anyway, that's another subject.
Do you believe we should be using drones overseas to take out targets despite the collateral damage?
I do.
Okay.
I think that, war is a nasty business. Again, I was never able to serve in the military. I got hurt playing football and with a knee that was rendered that I didn't. I asked to take my physical after college and went to St. Louis and went through that 8-hour ordeal and was told that I would only be available in cases of national emergency, and I regret that.
Mm-hmm.
But my father quit high school at the end of his junior year back in World War II, went to the Philippines for 2 years out in the jungle, saw some nasty stuff and did some nasty stuff. And, he used to share those experiences with me, and I've never forgotten that. And again, I regret that I didn't get the opportunity to serve. But as Andrew told me, and some of the things that he's seen and done, the war is not pretty. It's a necessary evil.
Okay, we're gonna have a break coming up. If you hear that music kick in, that's kind of our leader. Folks, we are speaking this morning with Steve Hodges. Steve is the Democratic candidate for the 8th District in Missouri to replace JoAnn Emerson due to her untimely resignation. And he will be running against the Republican candidate, which is Jason Smith, and he will also be running against the Libertarian candidate. And so we'll find out a little bit more about Steve and where he stands on specific issues on our return. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. We'll be right back.
Family Fun and Fitness, LLC presents rape and assault prevention classes at Country Cupboard in Licking, Missouri. Men, women, boys, and girls, if you want to know how to stack the deck in your favor in a situation where violence is the only answer, this class is for you. Rape and assault prevention classes are held Monday evenings at 5:30 beginning February 11th and run through March 18th. Class size is limited, so call today 417-260-1006 or register at Country Cupboard, 217 North Highway 63 in Licking.
I know what you're thinking, Bunk. You're thinking, did he fire 6 shots or only 5?
Dirty Harry gets all his ammo from the battery station. John Rambo, you guessed it. He gets his ammo from the battery station, too. So if you need ammo, go to the place where the guys who know about ammunition go, the battery station. They have one of the largest supplies of ammunition in the area. So make sure you're stocked up and don't get low on shells. Go to the battery station at 303 Washington Avenue in West Plains.
Imagine having your check deposited every month on time with no hassle and at no cost to you. Direct deposit with Community First puts your Social Security, retirement, or payroll check directly into any of your Community First accounts. It's just as safe and secure as if you made the deposit in person. Make things easy with direct deposit at Community First.
Living up to our name, Community First Banking Company.
Community First. Member FDIC.
Weather is a service of News Talk 107.1 The Point. Contact Josh or Cody at 255-2548 for more information on making weather sponsorships part of your marketing plans.
From the Point Weather Center, for this morning, a partly cloudy sky, mixed clouds and sun through the day with a high of 38. It'll be partly cloudy tonight, low 16. Sunshine for tomorrow, high around 40. A sunny day Sunday, temperatures near 50. Maybe some showers Monday. I'm staff meteorologist Jim Rinaldi, and for more information, visit my1071thepoint.com.
Another year older, another birthday blood. Not when you're listening to the Birthday Club here on 107.1 The Point each morning during the morning show. Proudly presented by Ryan's Family Restaurant. Call in your loved ones, your mom, dad, grandma, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, nieces, whoever, for their chance to be the winner of a great buffet and drink from Ryan's Family Restaurant. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you from 107.1 The Point and Ryan's Family Restaurant.
All right. I want to thank our friends over at West Plains Pawn and Gun. Outstanding location where they have some 400 plus firearms in stock at all times. Great opportunity for you to obtain a firearm or accessories, magazines, ammunition, etc. You can find them at westplainspawn.com. You can also find them at Highway 160, about a mile and a half past Walmart on the right-hand side. And you can call them at 417-256-3000. Also, our friends over at Ozark Mountain Self-Reliance can be reached at ozarkmtnselfreliance.com on the web. You can call Brian down there and ask any questions that you have at 870-492-4030. They're located a half mile east of Walmart on Route 62 in Mountain Home. And then, of course, you can reach our friends down at Battery Station at 303 Washington Avenue, 257-7799. And they can be found on the web at batterystation.com. They will be open today, and they will be open again all day tomorrow. If you have a co-op order in there for bulk food, you can go pick it up either today or tomorrow. And we'll address that further tomorrow during our show as well. Okay, Steve, I apologize, but commercials are capitalism in action, if you know what I mean, on radio.
Hey, I have broadcast ball games for a number of years on the local station here in East Prairie, football and basketball, and I'm always very cognizant of making sure I get those commercial sponsors in, because after all, if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be there. So
sure.
I thoroughly understand.
Gotcha. Hey, let me jump back to this drone topic, and let's talk about the domestic side of this thing, because we of course have a lot of concern about the fact that the president has got, his, if you want to use the term the mainstream media does, his kill list, right? Would you support a prohibition against armed drone use in the United States domestically?
No.
You would not?
No. I tell you, this came up in one of my agriculture committees about a week or two ago, and there was a proposal, and there's a bill that did pass out of committee.
Yeah.
And it talked about the
House Bill 46. I know what it is. It's to prohibit and limit drone use. I'm familiar with it.
Absolutely. And this.
You disagree with that policy?
I'm sorry?
You disagree with that?
I did. The vote in the committee was 14-1, and I was the one.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, why? And I don't want to drag a whole lot of time out on this issue, but to me, this is a hot button, and I would ask you why.
Mike, it just impressed me as some frivolous legislation.
I see. Well, okay, then let's forget that Bill 46. Let's talk about the domestic use of drones, armed drones, in the United States domestically. Would you support the president's use of armed drones to take out a target of interest?
Oh, armed drones?
Yeah.
Okay, no.
Okay.
No.
You scared me there for a minute.
Yeah, no. I'm sorry, I must have missed that word. The thing that House Bill 46 you're talking about was
all drones, period. Right.
Surveillance, yeah.
Sure.
But because I felt like it was almost thing as Big Brother watching.
Okay. By the way, I have an amendment to 46 I'd like to do, and that's to register all drones currently or in the future that are being purchased and used, whether they're by law enforcement or a private organization, including a news organization. You have to register them in a public database that has to be available to folks on the internet, and every drone for every flight has to file a flight plan and retain those images and any photographs or videos that they take in a permanent database.
I would have no problem with that. That's transparency, and I would have no problem with that. The public deserves the right to know.
Yeah. I'm going to work with Guernsey on trying to add that language to that, because I think it's important that, we as citizens have a way to recognize when something is being used, because we hear a lot out of government that isn't always quite accurate. And this transparency word is thrown around a lot, but we don't see a lot of it.
Well, you're exactly right, and I tell you what, I'm a very much a proponent for that. I think the public deserves the right to know if they want to know, if they're involved. If somebody wants is just like in my business. If they want to know something, they have the right to ask me, and I have the obligation to respond.
Sure.
That's why I'm there. Steve Hodges didn't put himself in office as state representative. The people did.
Right.
We had a senator up there who's not there anymore, and I'm not going to go into it, but if I mention his name, probably a lot of ears would perk up. But I've had people talk to me about legislators, in-office legislators, removing people from their office saying, get out of my office. I really struggle with that.
Sorry, that's my office. I'm just lending it to you. Me and 700,000 other folk.
That's exactly right, and I really differ greatly. I tell you what, again, I'm very conscious of my constituency, and that's why I get to enjoy my job as much, or my opportunity as much as I do.
Sure. Okay, I got two biggies for you. Abortion. Where do you stand on pro-life, or where are you on that topic?
I am against abortion. I tell you, perhaps with the exception of incest.
You are a Dixiecrat.
Yeah. I tell you what, this is something that.
Well, let me finish, because you started to answer there and you caught my attention. For rape and incest, you would agree with abortion?
I would.
Okay, but for all other purposes?
No.
Okay.
No, it's morally wrong.
Okay. And by the way, we're in agreement on that. So, not that my agreement really matters in your life one way or the other, but
well, it does. Are you a resident of the 8th Congressional District?
I am, and I am a voter.
That's right. And it didn't matter whether whatever you are. You still have you're entitled to your opinion.
Sure. How about Obamacare? Let's talk about a topic that quite frankly, ruffles a lot of feathers. We're in the midst of, or in the throes of, whether or not Obamacare is going to be a boondoggle, or whether it's going to be the great savior of the masses. We're already seeing implementation that is only half-baked at best, and of course the cost of Obamacare looks like it's going to, not only on a taxational basis, dwarf the original estimates, but that the penalties, or slash tax, or whatever the heck you want to call it, from the individual who's going to be covered by it, looks like it's, they're talking about a bronze plan is $20,000, and if you don't have $20,000, then they're going to whack you for $2,400 in penalties, for which you get nothing. What's your thoughts on Obamacare?
Well, first of all, I think that finding inclusion is just absolutely ridiculous.
But then how do you force people to join it?
I'm sorry?
Then how do you force people to join it if there's not a penalty? If there's no teeth to the concept that everybody has to join to spread the risk, how do you force people to join it? I guess I'm playing devil's advocate, on that point.
We have great need in the 8th Congressional District. We're one of the poorest congressional districts, and we have people that don't have insurance, which is very sad. I see people at my age, I'm 64, I see people dying every day over here or who appear to be at advanced age because maybe they didn't have proper medical attention. That's one of the things, personally, I've been fortunate enough. I do preventive maintenance in just about every area of health. I can't afford that, and fortunately, I've had health insurance most of my working life. I tell you, I like some aspects of the Affordable Health Care Act. I'm sorry, I really struggle saying Obamacare, but anyway, I understand the purpose behind it.
Okay.
People need medical services. The governor, is pushing the Medicaid expansion. I had a wonderful conversation with a lady the other day who had written me a 3-page handwritten letter. She's in her 70s. And she and her husband especially, has some health problems. And I thought, I'm not just, she talked about how she had contacted Representative Emerson's office, and she'd gotten back several letters with some fancy words, but they really didn't answer the question. I thought, this lady needs to be contacted by phone. And that's all, with all due respect to Representative Emerson, she can't contact everybody by phone. But anyway, I tried to, and I did, and we had a great exchange, and she talked about the waste and the fraud, that's prevalent, that costs us a lot of money.
And that's only going to grow through the existing or the implementation of this as it goes forward.
Regrettably, you're probably right, Mike.
Okay, we've got so many topics here. I'd love to, because I'm sure you and I could debate Obamacare all day long. But let me just touch on a couple of different other topics, because we're about to go to a break, and then after that we're only going to have a few minutes left.
Well, maybe we'll have another time in the future.
Well, actually, I do a show on Saturday, and I'd love to have you come in because it's a 3-hour show for starters, so I could give you a longer window of time, and then also maybe open it up to phone callers who might have questions of their own that I haven't covered. So I'll certainly arrange with you to do that.
Okay, we'll do that.
The idea of right to work. This current legislation right now in the state, and I know this is a state issue, but I think it's important enough that we understand where you stand on it. Where do you stand on right to work? Kind of brief.
Okay. I am not a proponent of right to work.
Okay. On that we will disagree.
Well, I understand that, but we have. I don't think it's prohibitive to new industry, and I say that with reference to Noranda, which has been my Noranda Aluminum, which employs almost 1,000 people down here, about 22 miles from my house. Mm-hmm. I know both the corporate people and I know the union people. They have a terrific working relationship. I know that Noranda just made a commitment to expand their aluminum operation. In fact, I saw Kip Smith, the CEO and chairman, and Chuck Skoda in Jefferson City about a week and a half ago, and I saw Chuck this week on 2 different occasions.
Okay, I'm going to throw this one at you real quick because the break's coming up and the music's playing. Minimum wage increase federally mandated to $9 an hour. Are you for or against that?
I am for that, and then I think it's up to the states to decide what level that they want to seek with that.
But it's a federal the president's pushing for it federally. Do you agree that it should be a federal mandate?
Yes.
Okay. Folks, we're going to take a quick break. When we return, we will try to wrap up our discussion with Steve Hodges and get his thoughts on the issues the other issues on the list. And then I assure you, and I promise you, we'll have him back on perhaps even this Saturday. I have to look at the schedule. Maybe we can squeeze him in tomorrow and give you folks a chance to call with your own questions. We'll be right back.
The New York Times recently did a story on preppers. The story concluded that prepping was very rational behavior. Preppers are doctors, lawyers, teachers, builders, and plumbers, people just like you. At Ozark Mountain Self-Reliance, we specialize in the products and knowledge to provide your own safety net for troubled times. Isn't it time you joined your Ozarks neighbors who are already working toward independence? That's Ozark Mountain Self-Reliance, 3225 Highway 62 East in Mountain Home, 870-492-4030.
The area's best selection of firearms, ammunition, and accessories can only be found at West Plains Pawn and Jewelry.
Online at westplainspawn.com.
Top of the line new and used optics from Nikon, Leopold, Burris, Redfield, Zeiss, and Schmidt & Bender. Ask about their selection of binoculars, laser sights, and night vision goggles. With new arrivals every week, the area's best selection of firearms, ammunition, and accessories can only be found at West Plains Pawn and Jewelry, 1713 West US Highway 160, or shop online at westplainspawn.com.
Okay, we are back. Don't want to forget my friend Jason over at Wits End Classic Barbershop. Best place you can get a haircut for $10 and about 50 miles. Make sure that you see our friend Jason. He is on the square in West Plains. It's called Wits End Classic Barbershop. You'll feel like you just stepped back about 50 years. And also offers an outstanding straight razor, hot lather shave that will be a great treat for any guy in your life. Let's hope your girl doesn't need a straight razor shave. Did I just say that out loud? All right, folks. Sometimes I'm not politically correct, Steve, as if you haven't figured that one out. So let's touch on a couple of other quick issues because we're going to run out of time very, very quickly now. I understand that we have just or are working to sign the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is a trade deal, NAFTA and CAFTA, and the proposed Atlantic version of that, and I'm not sure what they're going to call that, I guess AFTA.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on trade agreements?
Well, it's so important that we have positive trade agreements to promote the U.S. economy. It's kind of a personal thing of mine. If I pick up a ball cap, if I pick up anything, a necktie, whatever, I look to see where it's made.
Mm-hmm.
And, I would say that 1 out of 20, whatever you pick up, it's not made in the United States. That's regrettable. I think that, we certainly need to promote our own products, and I think Missouri in the past several years, especially under Governor Nixon's administration, we are increasing our agricultural exports is to a level that they've never been before, which is terrific. I mean, that's what we need to do. But for us to support foreign economies, I think that the government needs to make restrictions to the point that, we don't hurt our local manufacturers and our local businesses. We don't, again, just like you talked about China, loaning money to China and sending China money and, having a
trade imbalance.
That's certainly not good. So
okay.
My concern would be to become very educated about that and do what I could to promote U.S. manufacturing.
I'm going to have to ask you to be real brief on this one. United Nations, stay in it or get out of it?
I think we need to stay in it.
Okay. NDAA, an indefinite detention permission for the United States of America to hold Americans under indefinite detention.
Well, I'm against that.
Thank God. I was going to say, depending upon your answer to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Balanced budget amendment.
I favor that.
Okay. Agenda 21, and I know this is a long topic, but should we have a national policy that we are not going to work towards implementing Agenda 21 as proscribed and described by the United Nations?
Mike, quite honestly, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, fair enough. Immigration issues, we're currently working towards that. Do you agree with the president's concept that we should have a blanket amnesty, or should we have a something in the middle, something along the lines of what the Republicans are talking about, or should we just have a hard line that says nothing happens until, number one, the borders are shut and verifiably shut, and two, everyone has come forward and indicated who they are within some time frame, and after that we will, and if you don't, by the way, if you don't come forward during the amnesty, then you're immediately subject to removal.
Yeah, I'm not for a blanket program. I think that, anyone that wants to come to these United States should be welcome, but they should satisfy some requirements, residency requirements. I mean, we have a privilege. We were born into these United States, and I don't think that we just ought to allow people to come in and become residents, carte blanche, and enjoy all the privileges and rights that we as Americans have fought for and worked for.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. The issue of administrative agencies. Now, this is a long topic, and it's a difficult and complex one. But we are awash in federal agencies and state administrative agencies which operate extra-constitutionally. They have usurped executive, judicial, and legislative power by basically passing more regulations, and which are called regulations, but they actually are operated and treated like law, and yet they are completely outside of any purview or review by Congress. And our Constitution very clearly states that Congress has an obligation to pass all laws, and then the president has an obligation to sign them, or they cannot be made. Do you believe that administrative agencies can be delegated authority by a constitution or by a Congress?
No.
Okay. So what do we do about the myriad of administrative agencies who are, for all intents and purposes, eating our substance? And I mention that because we're talking of the IRS, the EPA, the DHS, the DEA. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. There's literally over 1,000 of them.
This is not going to sound like a traditional Democrat to you, Mike, but I'm very much for restrictions on extension of government agencies. I was a businessman, my father and I, all our lives, and we were constantly, every day, except in the very best of times, perhaps. But when times became a little more difficult, a little more challenging, we continued to look for things to tighten our belt. I think that's what the American citizens are doing right now in today's society. I think we're enjoying probably the most prosperous times we've ever had, but in the same respect, things are difficult. Things are difficult for people who are at a decent income level. They're extremely difficult for people at a lower income level. And I think that, we need to constantly be striving for efficiency of the operation, cutbacks when necessary. I'm not for expanding government agencies. I know, again, that...
How about shutting them down?
If need be, if consolidation of services is possible, then that needs to be done.
Well, if they're extra constitutional in their nature, don't we have an obligation to shut them down?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'll talk to you about it by phone when we try to schedule another date to get together. But I'll give you some information that will kind of be an eye opener for you on that.
That would be fine.
Where do you stand in the issue of marijuana's legality?
I'm against it.
Okay. Where do you stand in the topic of the war on drugs that we've been waging for some 45 years?
I think that I tell you what, I have had experiences with numerous friends and family, close associates. Drugs are awful. They ruin lives, they ruin families, they ruin careers, and I will never feel comfortable saying that marijuana or any other kind of drugs are legal. I saw an article last night. We had an issue right here in my my state district. Something similar to synthetic marijuana.
Yeah.
A local businessman. I'm against drugs in any capacity.
Okay. We've been fighting a war on poverty now since the Great Society of Johnson. And it appears that we've spent trillions of dollars, and I do mean literally trillions, on that war. And yet poverty, if anything, has gone up if it's not static. What are we doing wrong? And I'm going to have to ask you to be real brief because we've got about a minute and a half or so left.
Yeah. Our economy, is constantly changing, and perhaps some of the things that were good back in the 60s, which I can certainly relate to, maybe not work 50 years later. I think those things need to be customized. Inflation certainly is, when I talked the other day about loading watermelons for 50 cents an hour, when I was in high school,
the
60s. 50 cents an hour got me a long way. I could go to the local restaurant and get a Ben and cheese sandwich, a soda, and a bag of chips, and have a nickel left over for the pinball machine. So
I don't think you can get a cup of coffee for 50 cents today, Steve.
Yeah, exactly. So
you might get the cup. If you want coffee in that, that's extra.
I bought a glass of tea at Cracker Barrel in Herculaneum the other day for $1.99.
My goodness.
$1.99 for a glass of tea.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that these social programs have to be reviewed and revisited. And once put in place, that doesn't mean they should be here forever.
Yeah. Where do you stand on this issue of dependency with the government's drive to make Americans dependent upon the social fabric, if you will, or the support system designed and built into our social fabric?
I think that we need to have programs developed where they're targeted at some point for people to get their independency. I have become more and more aware, is in my experience as state representative, there's people out there that their lives are never going to change, either from health issues or education issues or background issues. I see that, especially I'm almost very intelligent about that and very knowledgeable about that because of my own district and how poor we are. I have the 3 poorest counties in the state.
Well, let me just interrupt you for a second because we've got a minute left. I agree with you on the concept of a guy who's physically unable to work. But when you talk about somebody who's mentally or educationally limited, is it our obligation as a society to support that individual for the remainder of their natural life and their children and their family and?
Well, mentally, perhaps educationally, that can be fixed, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
They can improve their own situation. I worked myself through college and graduate school. This is one of the things I hear. Why do people need buses to carry them around the college campuses?
Sure.
I walked.
Right.
But again, you're always looking to make improvements and make yourself marketable. But, there are segments of our society that need to be provided for and some that don't. When I look at the new births page in the paper and I see that such and such, Mary Sue, has just had her 4th child, second son, and unmarried, I really have a problem with that.
Sure. Well, listen, we're out of time. I definitely want to have you back on again, and I guarantee you my listeners do because I see my call board has been lit up, even though I told people we're not taking calls today. So here's what I'd like to do. I'll call you, and we'll schedule another date to get you back on, perhaps on a Saturday or again during the week. And I'd like to have you on again sometime before as we move closer and closer and closer towards the election. I want to thank you very, very much for taking the time out of your day to speak with us this morning. I think you've enlightened us about your positions and where you stand, and I very much appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure.
Thank you very, very much.
Okay, Mike.
Right. Hey, folks, you're listening to America's Voice Now. That was Steve Hodges. Steve, again, is the representative from the Democrat side who's going to be running to fill JoAnn Emerson's seat. And our goal today was to try to educate you and bring you up to speed on where he stands. Please visit our website at americasvoicenow.org and find us on Facebook at facebook.com/America's Voice Now. You all have a wonderful day, and remember...
Let's get to the point. Well, let me get to the point. FM News Talk for the Ozarks is FM 107.1 The Point. KBMV.
Fox News Radio. I'm Lisa Brady.